Hi, Angel. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Hi, thank you so much for welcoming me.
So the first question I want to ask is, who is Angel? How do you define yourself, or how would you describe yourself?
My name is Angel. I would describe myself as a person who is really good at finding things. So my day job is that I work in cybersecurity. So in cybersecurity, you have to be really good at finding things because you don't want the system to get hacked. You don't want people to get unauthorized access. And then my side hustle is that I write about cheap and free stuff to do in New York City. It's because I started a blog to teach people how they could start saving on everyday things by going to free events so they can have a bigger travel budget. So I use the knowledge I have about looking at attention to detail and finding things to blend them in both my personal and my work life.
How did you start blogging? Like, I know you said you obviously wanted to help people find cheap things to do when traveling in New York City, but what was like the aha moment where it's like, okay, I'm definitely going to start this blog?
Okay, so I think the aha moment was that, like, for me, I got approached by the Today Show to do an interview with them. So I'm a member of the Her Money podcast group. So on the podcast group, one of the founders wrote in the Facebook group, like, "Hey, we're looking for people to interview in New York City. Blah 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 blah. Like, if you're interested, just drop me like a note." So I did, and then the producer called me from Today Show, and then she really liked me. And that was like one of the things that kind of clicked to me because I was like, people tell me all the time to start a blog, but I felt like I was never good enough. And now, like, a big TV show is telling me that, like, hey, we want you to be on our show and we really like you. So I think that's where it really clicked in.
That's really interesting to hear because I feel like most of the times people like have the platform already established and they have like maybe not even like a high like following, but at least they at least have the platform. But you got the interview before that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like I still had my Instagram and my Facebook and like everything too. And people told me all the time, like, I've been traveling for the past 7 years. So I've been to 34 countries and 6 continents. So like I've always wanted to start a blog, but it never really like hit me like, oh, like can you make money off it? Can you get a lot of publicity off it? I never really researched it, you know? And then finally
Mhm.
when a moment came where it was in one of my randomly in the Facebook group where the one of the founders was like, "Hey, we're looking for people to interview and talk about money and stuff." And then later the producer called me and was like, "Hey, like we really like you. We want you to be on the show to do a segment." And that's when it really clicked because I did all this research the past few years about blogging and stuff, but I never really like thought I was good enough. And then finally, it was like a big TV show was like, "Hey, we want you to be on our show because we really like you." That's when it just really skyrocketed.
Okay, and for people who may not know, your blog is Pennywise Traveler. For a new subscriber or someone who's just interested in your blog, what can they find on
Okay,
there?
so my blog has money tips and also budget travel itineraries and also cheap and free stuff to do in New York City. So each week I have a weekly blog post about free events in New York City. I have one for each day of the week, so you can easily find stuff to do on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or whichever day of the week you like. And in additionally, I also post like the recap in my IG stories where I have a list of the free events that week, so I repurpose my content in my IG stories too.
Mm. And I can honestly say the free like list of things to do every week in New York City, I have definitely used them before. And it has come in handy just to like find like random stuff to do. And not even the fact that it's free is just like getting yourself like out there and like acclimated with the city better. It's great. And you do make it easy because you don't not only like show the event, but you actually show like which train is there, which stop to get off. And it's very like easy for someone who is a New Yorker and someone who may be visiting as well.
I had the free event list. The way I made it was because I was looking at other different types of websites and I noticed that they kind of made it hard for the person to find the place. Like they gave you the address, but then like for people like in New York City, they want to know what time it is, what train stop to get, and what also is the RSVP link. Because it's one thing to tell the person like this from this time to this time, but what happens if that event requires you to RSVP? And if you don't put the link in your website, how can people find it? Because it's also more work for them to find it.
So true, so true. You make it like very easy. I can't even lie.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make it easy for the person because I thought about the person who was like reading the event list. Because it's one thing to put a bunch of events on there, but if you're not going to make it easy for the person, tell them what's the nearest train and what time it is and what's the original event list, how are you also going to teach a person how to find things in the
Mhm.
future? Because in my free weekly event list, I also teach people, like, I put a link to say, like, how this is how I found my top ways to find free events. If you don't teach the person, like, how to find things, and how can they, like, improve themselves, you know?
Mhm.
Because, like, you also want to be people to, like, show them, like, hey, like, you can do this. Because, like, I guess, like, for my blog is more of, like, encouragement too. Like, this is how I find things, and then you're possible finding ways things too. And it kind of worked out in that sense where sometimes people, like, they email me occasionally, say, like, hey, I saw that this event's coming up and it's not listed in your event list. Can I give it to you? And I'm like, oh, sure. So, like, it's good that, like, people also give me back events that they think are interesting as well.
Mhm. So you said you've been to 34 countries. How and what sparked that travel bug?
Okay. So my travel started in my senior year of college. So, like, being like any other broke college student, I didn't have any money. And I was like, okay, I want to study abroad, but I don't have any money. So what am I going to do? So I was like, okay, so I'm going to apply to a bunch of scholarships. So I applied to a bunch of scholarships and everything, and I ended up getting free housing, free tuition, and $7,000 in spending money. And my university and the people who were in charge of the scholarships told me, like, if you don't use all this money, you have to give it back. And I was like, okay, well, if you're gonna make me use all this money, can I travel with it? And they're like, yeah, because it counts as an expense because you're studying abroad overseas. And I was like, all right, well, if you're gonna give me all this money, I'm gonna go spend it and travel everywhere. So I end up using a lot of the money to travel across Europe and everything. And I also used it to visit Africa in Morocco. And then right after I finished my study abroad program, I did volunteer work because one of the people who donated towards my scholarship, he also had an organization where I did volunteer in Botswana and taught people, like, how to read English and how to, like, read and everything and fix houses and help them with, like, yard work.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, it all came back, like, from that kind of, like, story where, like, being like any other broke college student, what are you gonna do? You're gonna apply to scholarships, right? Because, like, if you could spend 1 hour on Facebook, you could spend 1 hour in applying for scholarships. So I thought of that mentality, and I was like, I need money because if I want to do this travel thing, like, I need money somehow. My parents don't have any money, so I'm gonna apply to scholarships. And, like, I literally just did that, and it ended up being, like, free tuition, free housing, and, like, $7,000 to use to spend overseas. So I was like, okay, this works.
So traveling, what has been, I guess, like your best adventure so far?
For me, I think Iceland was definitely up there. Iceland was very different from other places I've been to because there was a lot of ice and stuff. When I went there, when I was in the airplane, I even saw the northern lights on the airplane. So it's something different I had never seen before. We're in the sky, you see all these different colors from the northern lights.
And what's been like your most, I don't want to say like your worst travel experience, but what's been like your most travel experience that like taught you the most, I guess?
I guess,
Or like you,
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I could totally see that. I guess for me, when I first started traveling, I didn't know much, but I forced myself out there because, like, for me, it's like I thought back to the mentality of, like, hey, if I don't do this now, when am I ever gonna do this? So when I first started traveling, I traveled by myself, like a female solo traveler learning everything by herself. And this was the age when T-Mobile didn't have free overnight, like free like international travel on your iPhone or anything. So I literally, like, went on Google the day before I went left somewhere else, wrote things down by hand, like what to do and stuff, what's nearest train station and everything, and did it all by myself. Because this is back in the days where there was no free data roaming around, so you had to plan in advance. And then also I started had to getting used to talking to people by myself because I was traveling alone. So, like, I had to find, like, different ways to meet people, and I met people through tours or even the hostel just to hang out with.
Mm. So traveling solo. So I've traveled solo. My first solo trip was actually to New York City. Like I traveled, I'm from Florida, so I've traveled throughout Florida alone, but traveling to like New York City was a pretty big deal for me. I know like for me, I didn't tell people I was going just because I didn't want like people's negative energy or maybe their like reservations to stop me. But for people who maybe want to travel by themselves, especially as a woman, what's your like advice to like just do it, or what's like tips you would share with women solo travelers?
Okay. So I guess like the first tip I would say is to do your research. You want to be very careful depending on where you go. Most of the places I've been to are very safe for women, but I do admit when I was in the Middle East and when I was in Turkey, it's a little bit more, and also Morocco because it's part of the Middle East. It's a lot different to travel there than versus like other parts of Europe and like Latin America, just because the cultures are kind of different. So you kind of want to be respectful of the country too, because do you think of different places like even Saudi Arabia for the first time in like how many years women are finally allowed to drive. So like you have to remember like certain countries women are not the highest regard. So it's best to do your research and research the country before and to see like what the customs are and how to do things. And then from there, after doing your research about the country and seeing how like what it's like to travel solo, like you literally Google like travel solo woman like Paris, and then people give you free free tips about how to travel solo and travel in Paris or wherever you want to go. And from there, what I did next is like I would book hostels that had good ratings. So for hostels, you get what you pay for. If you're gonna book a cheap hostel that doesn't have really good ratings, you're also gonna meet cheap people there. So for if you're traveling alone, you want to have a good time, I would say like pay a little bit more because you're gonna meet different types of people in the hostel. So what I did was like I literally just came back from China 2 weeks ago. So literally in China, I was looking for hostels because I was traveling alone. And also one of the things is like China's a lot different than traveling to other countries. You have to have a VPN beforehand to go to China because Facebook, Google, Instagram, all the big websites are all blocked. So you need to get a VPN before you get there because once you get there, you can't search anything. So it's gonna be very difficult for you to navigate. So that's why it's important to like research which country you're going to beforehand. And one of the things is that when I was in
Mm.
sorry, when I was in Beijing, it's very common. Like one of the favorite dishes to eat there is Peking duck. So what I did was like I came back from my tour and I literally walked around the lobby and was like, "Hey, does anyone want any duck?" And this is like around 6 o'clock, so it's like around dinner time. And I recruited a big amount of people. So then like big group of size of us, probably like close to like 10 people or so, went together to go eat Peking duck together. Because if I didn't do that, like I had to pay for that duck myself, and also the hostel I was at didn't have a fridge. So you have to do your research beforehand to see how you could get people like entertained and also like what the customs are there as well.
Mm. Are you a part of like any organizations or any groups that like support women traveling or any suggestions for people to like, I guess, build like that sense of community that will help them get more
Yeah, I
inspired?
definitely am. So like there's a lot of different communities you could join. One of them I'm in is Girls Love Travel. So for Girls Love Travel, it's a big Facebook group. And what you can do also is you could post on there saying like, "Hey, I'm going to so and so date. What do you recommend here? Do you have any recommendations?" And people like respond so fast to help each other out. It's such a big community. And one of the other organization I'm in is called Wonderful. It's also a big traveler community. They have an app too, and they had this special pricing. I joined in August, where if you joined in August, you had free lifetime membership. So it was really good because people post on there. I just came back from a travel point seminar that I had like a week or two ago, and it taught me how to use my travel points better through a webinar. So those are definitely two of the organizations I recommend because there's a lot of Facebook groups out there too where you can look up how to travel solo as a woman.
So you just mentioned travel points. That's a really good thing with travel because I feel like one, for people, if they're not traveling in groups, they're traveling solo. And then two, your point with the duck, and also the what you mentioned with travel points is making sure that you spend wisely. What resources do you use so that way you can make sure one before you even go to any country, how do you like plan your travel to like save as much as possible but also spend wisely? Earlier in the point you made about making sure that you're not picking like too cheap of hostels, or you want to try duck because obviously it's a popular dish in the country, but you also don't want to pay for the whole dish yourself if you're not going to have anywhere to store it or other things. How do you make sure like on the front end that you're spending smartly when traveling, and also during the travel, how do you make sure you're spending smartly but also getting the full experience?
So for me, to gain the full experience, I do so much research. I look up so many things on Google to see like what people have done, what their past itineraries are. For me, what I recommend is that I have the Chase Sapphire Preferred card. So just as full disclosure, like like, I'm just giving my background of how I use the credit card and stuff. I'm not trying to like incentivize Chase or anything whatsoever. So the travel points are my own personal opinion. So for me, I felt like I finally ventured more into going to travel points this year. So for travel points, I finally started getting into it more this year. I'm actually going to Chicago seminars, which is this upcoming weekend in Chicago, to learn more about how to using travel points. So just as full disclosure, I do have points cards, and like when I'm giving advice about points cards, it's just for informational purposes only. So I'm not giving you any like recommendation to do whatsoever, just because I'm still learning myself too, and this is all my personal opinion. So for me, when I first thought of travel credit cards, I was kind of like, oh, I don't need this. Why do I need to pay an annual fee? You know. The thing is like when you do the math after you have a travel credit card, you save so much money because like all those little things add up. So example is that I have Chase Sapphire Preferred. So you get double the points on travel and food. So it's like if you eat out a lot and if you travel a lot where you buy your Metro card or you take Uber and stuff, you charge on your credit card, you get double the points. And that points, I like when I did all the math by the end of the year, I got at least 1 or 2 free flights. And like 1 or 2 free flights, like a flight to LA is like $300. That travel credit card, the annual fee is like $100. So you save $200 essentially by even getting like 1 free flight a year because all this stuff adds up. And for me, I didn't really research it that much until this year where I made a commitment to myself. I was like, I'm going to learn how to travel hack better just because I travel so much. And instead of just becoming reliant on one travel credit card, I want to learn how to maximize all my different types of credit cards I have and then use them to most benefit. And also, like the travel credit card I have for Chase, it doesn't have foreign transaction fees. If you have a normal credit card, like just an everyday credit card, most of them have transaction fees for foreign transaction fees. So it does add up. So like if you use stuff that's non-Capital One, because Capital One is one of the only few providers that don't charge foreign transaction fees for their free cards, that 3% or 2% or whatever foreign transaction fee that they charge you adds up a lot. And also, like, you pair that up with a Charles Schwab account. A Charles Schwab account, they don't charge you for ATM fees or for transaction fees. So I use that a lot when I travel overseas to get money out of the ATM. Because depending where I go, like certain restaurants overseas, they will charge you extra to use your American credit card. So I always ask them like, hey, can I use like my American credit card here or can I use cash here? Is it the same price or is it more expensive? And if you tell me the same price, I'll charge on my credit card because I get the points and I don't get foreign transaction fees. So it's more beneficial to me. But they do charge me, then I just like, if I have cash, I'll pay in cash. If not, sometimes they let you run out of the restaurant, just quickly get like cash around like corner or so at an ATM. And then I just use my Charles Schwab account there.
And what travel hacks do you use like when planning in the sense of like apps? Like or even like do you use like Excel like to plan out your trips when it comes to like hostels and organizing like the days or anything like that?
I use a lot of Google Docs. So like I'm actually going with my friend to Hawaii in 2 weeks. So we do a lot of Google Docs collaborating together about what we're doing and stuff. So we collaborate like together like what hotel we're staying, what restaurant we're going to eat. Because the people I'm going with for this specific trip, they're also big foodies. So like it depends on what kind of trip you're going to. If I'm going to China by myself, like for me, I like to eat, but I'm not very specific of like I had to eat at this restaurant, or this restaurant. For the Hawaii trip, some of my friends are like really into food, so they want to eat at the Michelin restaurant or the really famous restaurant just because like they're like, well, I'm paying all this money to get there, so I want to eat like really good food. So it depends on who you're traveling with. For me, like if I'm traveling by myself, sometimes I'm not like really specific where I have to eat at that token restaurant. If I make it there, that's cool, but if I don't make it, I'm also not very like gonna be very like angry about it. So for me, I use a lot of Google Docs. I use a lot of Excel just to map out everything. So I feel like that's very helpful.
So we're also coming up on the holidays. What advice do you have traveling during the holidays?
So for the holidays, I'm actually traveling to Argentina and Antarctica. So I would recommend for the holidays, if you can, try to book it a little bit earlier just because I remember last year when I was buying Christmas, this was either last year or the year before, I bought it super last minute because I didn't know what I was doing yet because I was still like taking my tech class. So I actually had to travel hack and fly out of Boston because the plane ticket was like $200 cheaper to go to Boston. And it's only like $20 to take a Chinatown bus to Boston from New York. So I was like, I could either pay $200 extra to fly at JFK, or I have to pay extra to fly, like, or save $200 by flying out of Boston. So, like, one of the travel hacks I have is to research, like, how much it costs to fly out different airports, because you'd be surprised. Like, flying out of Boston is so much cheaper than flying out of New York sometimes. Like, when I flew to Iceland, that's when WoW Air first launched, and it was so much cheaper to fly out of Boston than New York. I saved almost $300 by flying out of Boston. So you just have to research where you're flying out of as well.
Okay. Okay, so going back a little bit more local, New York City. New York City is obviously coined as it's so expensive to live here. You pay so much for like groceries and just like going to even get like a bottle of water, you pay like $5. People joke around about. What are your New York City like local hacks?
So for New York City, I would recommend to either, for if you want to save water, for example, what you can easily do is bring like a refillable water bottle from you. I have a Swell bottle, so I can just refill it anywhere. If I feel like drinking hot water or hot tea that day, I have hot water in there, so I could drink like hot tea and stuff later. And it also keeps the water like cold for a certain amount of time. I've also noticed like whenever I go to Starbucks and ask them for a water cup, they don't charge me. So that's an easy hack too if you want to drink water and you're thirsty. You literally go to Starbucks and ask them like, "Hey, can I have a water cup?" and they won't charge you. Also, for finding hacks locally wise, I use a lot of Eventbrite and Facebook. So a lot of Eventbrite, they list like a lot of free events. They have a free filter. You could filter it by day and see which free events are offered that day. And also Facebook, a lot of accounts, they have like different free things that day. And also like the hashtags, you could easily look up free NYC and find a lot of cheap and free stuff in free NYC and things to do in NYC. So some of the famous Facebook accounts that I follow besides like mine, which is like Pennywise Traveler, is also FOMO Feed and Art World NYC and Queen of Freebet. So those are like a few of my favorites for finding free stuff.
What is your favorite free activity? Like I know sometimes, so basically, okay. Basically, I know that you post obviously activities that may just be happening just only that week, but sometimes there's maybe an activity that's ongoing as free. What is your favorite like free pastime activity to do?
For me, I like going to sound bath meditation. That's actually one of my favorite free events. I actually did that today. So on Saks, they had a free sound bath today. And I actually went there, and ironically, when I went there for the free sound bath meditation, they were also doing self-care Sunday, so they had a lot of free things in the store as well. So I got my makeup done for free. I didn't have to pay for anything. I also got a free like massage there because they're doing like a stretching exercise there, and I got a free tarot card reading as well. So it's funny sometimes because certain companies like Saks, they didn't even post that they were having them free on their Instagram or anything. But ironically, I was there on Eventbrite where I found a free sound bath meditation and ended up having a free self-care Sunday event with all these free things.
Mm. And what exactly is a sound bath meditation?
So a sound bath meditation, they have a lot of different instruments that they play during the sound bath. And then it rings closely to your ears and stuff, and you feel more relaxed after listening to the sounds.
Okay.
It's like music to your ears, literally.
Okay. So 2 questions. First, so you have one day in New York City, what are you doing?
Oh, if I had like one day in New York City, if I was traveling,
Or just in general, like even like what's your favorite, like when you only have like one day of free time, it's anything you could do. Or yeah, if you're traveling, what would you do in that one day?
so I think in that one day, I would even go, so I would start off maybe in Wall Street, walk around Wall Street just because it's so famous and everything. And then from there, after going through Wall Street, take a train up to 34th Street. So you could take the ACE to 34th Street, walk down the High Line. And after walking down the High Line, take from there, from 34th Street, you could take the AC to Columbus Circle. And from there, go to Central Park, walk through the park and everything, and see the park how it is and everything. And in Central Park, there's so many different activities you could do. I even rode a boat in Central Park there and just walking through the park and everything. There's a lot of nice things to see.
Okay, so now a weekend in New York City, what would you do?
So a weekend in New York City, I would do the things that I just did where I went to Wall Street, saw Central Park, saw the High Line. I would also go to Brooklyn Bridge to see the Brooklyn Bridge there and take pictures along the bridge because it's a very nice view. And then from there, I would go into Dumbo and then even eat at the pizza I'm forgetting the name of the famous pizza place. I think it's Grinaldi's that's down there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Grinaldi's.
it's take the pizza down there, and then what I would do after that is that I would go back in the city, venture around Soho, and then to Times Square to see all the big lights.
Mm,
So I would hit
I
all the
love.
famous parts of New York City then, because I feel like as like a tourist, like most of the time they want to see like the highlights and stuff. So I would say the main highlights are going to like Times Square, Central Park, Brooklyn Bridge, hit all those highlights. And if you can, what I would do also, it's like if you were trying to find like a free thing to do that night, with my free event list, you can find something free to do that night.
Okay. Okay, so I know that you're not like exactly like a money expert. This is what you do for a living. However, what are your tips for people who want to just get like better about their money so they can travel more?
So for me, I would say first start off with saving on your everyday things. So what I do is that I automate all my savings. So when I get my paycheck, instead of having one lump sum go straight to checkings or savings, I have it streamlined where I go get certain amounts dedicated to different savings accounts. So depending on what bank account you have, for example, I use Ally Bank. In Ally Bank, they let you have different types of bank accounts and you don't have to pay a fee. So they don't have any like um, money requirements like you have to have $500 or any certain amount of money in it. You have whatever amount you want in it. So if you want to trick yourself, what I would do is like have your paycheck go into your main checking account, and from Ally split into different savings account and have it like tailored that way. So it's super managed where you know where your money and how much money is going towards different types of accounts.
Okay. Okay, so now I have a few wrap questions before I ask my last question. Is there anything first off that I didn't ask that you want to say or you want to just let people know?
I think for me, it's like I would say like don't be afraid to like venture out and everything. I feel like as a female solo traveler, people often get too scared. But there's so many resources out there. You could easily meet people in your hostel. It's not as intimidating as you think. I've done it so many times where I just literally met people in the lobby in hostels, and then we end up hanging out. We end up becoming good friends. One of my friends, Martin, I literally met on my tour in Cambodia. Then I ended up staying at his place in Australia, and then we ended up going to Vietnam together. So it's like you meet people anywhere you go.
I agree. I know like when I traveled before, I think I went to LA and yeah, it was LA and the Uber driver, he thought the stop was mine, but it was actually the other people that were in there with me. And he's like, "Yeah, this is your stop, get out." And so I got out, but then I'm like, "Wait, this is nowhere near where I'm supposed to be." So I asked this girl for help and she was like, "Oh, I was headed to like church," and she was like, "Oh, I'm going to this cathedral. You can come with me to this church." So I was like, "Okay, sure, I'll go." And it was the best like day ever, the most unexpected adventure. So I know people say like obviously I think you can go off of energies and vibes. Like if something doesn't go right, definitely like tell the person like no, you don't want to go with them. But if it feels right and you feel like confident that you're safe, then I say go and have fun and just see where like the day takes you.
I totally agree with that because you have to read people quickly. Like I've met people who seem kind of fishy, so I'm like, no. Like for example, when I went to Vietnam, I was able to share a taxi because we ended up going to the same place, but I would not share a taxi with someone that I don't even know if we're not going to the same place because you don't know where they're going to take you. You get what I mean? Because you don't know if that taxi driver has a relationship with that person. So I'll give an example. So this was actually when I was in Peru. When I was in Peru, I remember I was talking to a tour guide from the tourist office about booking different types of things, and he set up with me to the taxi driver to go to a different place to buy like the plane ticket. And right when I was taking the taxi, I saw them exchange money. So I was like, okay, so he recruited me to this specific taxi driver to go to this certain place, probably because that person's gonna get an incentive out of it. He's not in my best interest because he's paying this guy. Why is he secretly paying this guy money, you know? So when you see kind of like fishy things like that, you kind of like just start to pick it up. That was one of when I first started traveling. So like I started to pick up things like that when I noticed when I went to other places of like just how people communicate, and if you feel a weird feeling with them, just leave because it's okay to leave, you know? Like because you don't want to be in a situation where you put yourself in a bad position because you never know what's going to happen. You're in a foreign country. And what happens if you don't have any like data or anything, or your cell phone runs out of battery? Like, what are you gonna do? And like, if you were with these people that make you feel awkward, it's not going to be a comfortable experience for you. So you want to like do what's best for you and read off the vibes very carefully. So like for me, it's like if I meet people in the hostel and I could tell from their vibes that they seem like good people, I'll go with them to a public place like a restaurant. But I'm not going to go anything like further obscure. Like if you're going to get drunk with these people you just randomly met at a hostel, like you can't put your trust into them that they will take you back to the hostel safely because you just met them. So like I would say like try to use your logic and try to feel out the vibes because you don't want to put yourself in a hostile situation or situation in general. Yeah, so just like use your instincts when you have certain things come to you because it's better to be safe than sorry. So just like read off the vibe, see what people are trying to tell you and how they communicate and stuff. And if they happen to go to the same place you're going to, then that's cool because you could split the cab or like whatever fare. Sometimes like when I go to certain tours, like if you pay as a group fare, it's cheaper. So just like use your best instincts when you're trying to book something. And for me, I notice it's always when I stay at the hostel because when I stay at the hostel, there's people already staying there. Like, what incentive do they have against me if I was to meet a person randomly on the street? Like, I don't know where they're from or where they've been, but if you're staying in the same hostel and you guys are going back to the same place, it's more likely to stay with someone there because you guys are heading to the same place versus if you meet someone on the street and they're staying somewhere else nearby the place you're going to, it's not as safe, because you don't know what their intentions are.
Now I'm just gonna ask you rapid fire questions. Tropical or nature?
I like nature.
Plane or boat?
Plane.
Wi-Fi or one with nature?
That one's a hard one. Oh my gosh. I actually like Wi-Fi.
Okay. Solo or group?
Solo.
Okay. So my last question I like to ask people, since the podcast is called Pour Into My Cup, do you feel that your cup is half empty or half full?
I feel like it's really full right now because I feel like I achieved a lot this year where I started this blog after years of feeling insecure of like not being good enough. And then it just happened by chance that like they wanted to film it for today's show. And then I finally paid off all my college loans this year. I reached the 800 credit score club, and then I'm going to Antarctica and Argentina next month. So I'm pretty happy about like the progress I've made so far because it took me so much time to get there. So for anyone listening, it's like the work will come, and it's like for you to like pair yourself up there because like it is possible. You just have to teach yourself how it's possible. And there's our secret ways to like save and stuff, like such as like automating your bank account to go to different types of accounts. So you have different funds for different things. So example is like if you have your bank account and you wanted to go towards like travel, towards like even paying off college loans or different places like going to Argentina or Antarctica, and then like college loans, you could make it tailored where it's specific to your needs of going to for different goals.
That is so like smart. And I honestly like that's so smart and I'm honestly so proud of you like with the accomplishments. I know that we talked like in a previous conversation about the 800 club and that is like literally goals for me. So I am like living vicariously through you until I reach that goal. So please keep it up.
Oh, thank you so much. My credit score might like it depends on what you want because I was doing some research lately because I was trying to think about this the other day. It's saying like if you want the high credit score or you could dip it a little bit lower, like slightly like less than 800 if I apply to different types of credit cards, but then I get free miles. So right now, after going to the seminar I'm going to next weekend, I'm gonna get more advice from them to say like, hey, is it better for you to like dip your credit score a little bit lower and get all these free miles because you might getting like $500 in free travel, or you could keep your 800 credit score. I'm gonna ask them for more travel advice just because I'm not the expert, so I'm gonna see how that point seminar goes.
Wait, so they're saying that you can like give up your 800 credit score for more travel?
What happens is that when you apply for credit cards, your credit score drops. So like I want to learn from the experts to say like, what did you guys do? What's your credit score? How do you maintain that? Or like what have you sacrificed to keep that score? And for me, yeah, so like I'm gonna do more research next weekend and hopefully find the answer. But if it comes down to it, between joining the 800 club or getting free flights, if my credit score is still over like a 700 or so, I think I would take the free flights over getting the 800 credit score because I already reached it. And for me, it's like, would I rather travel for free or just say that I have an 800 credit score? So for me, I think I would rather like travel more, just because it's more like in tune with what I want to do. But it's cool that I still made the 800 credits for a club. But like, it just depends on what your values are.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's one thing for me because I know like so the reason why I really like started traveling solo is because so many people would be like, "Yeah, I'll travel with you," but then like I get it, they have like their own things going on, but they'll be like, "Oh, life, oh, family, or oh, money." There was just so many factors that was stopping it. So I was like, "Okay, I can't wait forever, or at least I don't want to wait for the people. So I'm just going to do it myself." And I just started like just doing
That's
it.
good because it just takes time to get there. For me, I had to do it because I was like, it's either I wait for my friends when I studied abroad in Italy, and a lot of times they would bail or they just their plans didn't work out or just didn't align. And what happened was that when I started booking all these free, like not free, well, it's free for me because I had the scholarship, but not free for them. And when I told them like, oh, I'm going to go to like Greece this weekend, I'm going to go to Budapest this weekend, they started coming. So it just happens. Yeah, some of them started
Really?
coming because they wanted to join. Because they're like, oh, she has a plan. She seems like she knows what she's doing. And if they didn't, I was gonna go there anyway, so I didn't lose. But I do have to say that like when you travel with someone, you get to really know the person. So it's also like if you're testing out true friendship, you really know what that person is like outside your comfort zone. And I've learned that you can't travel with everybody because everybody has different needs. So some of my friends are more high maintenance than others. Like for example, the Hawaii trip, we're not staying at a hostel, we're staying at a hotel. Some of my other trips, I stayed with hostels because my
Mm.
friends are down to save money. But some of my other trips, my friends don't want to. So it's like also it's like so depending on what trip you go to, you see how people are outside their comfort zone and what they will like and what they don't like. But it's also okay to break from the group sometimes if it's okay. Because I remember when I was traveling to Costa Rica, some of the things I did, my friend didn't want to do. She didn't want to pay extra, but I did because I was already there. So I felt like it was needed to pay extra to do what I wanted to do. So like it's all about like communication. Like I think it's the best way. I think the best way is when you travel for group travel, you really see the person outside their comfort zone. And if you can, try to get as much like research before about the person, see what you guys are aligned with. Because certain trips I have to be a specific way because my friends are more catered towards that way. So for my Hawaii trip, my friends want to stay in a hotel. They don't want to stay in a hostel. They also want to do more expensive things, like they want to go hiking, eat at fancy restaurants. But some of my other friends might not be down for that. So it depends on what kind of person you're traveling with too. Because when you find out what kind of person you're traveling with, it also caters towards your schedule and see what kind of trip you can expect to have.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your comment that traveling does show you like really who your friends are because it's almost like living with the person, especially if it's like an extended trip. I remember my worst trip ever. The friend was like very like which isn't even a friend anymore. She was very like high maintenance and her and her boyfriend were fighting most of the trip and her boyfriend wasn't even there with us on the trip. She just kept like calling him and they just kept going back and forth and it turned out to be like one of my like not so great trips. So you just learn from it and I think like it's best like even if it's you and that friend's first time traveling, maybe start off with like a local place or somewhere that's like nearby where you can kind of like see before you go like international. Just so that way you're not, spending all your money to be disappointed. Or if you go and you're just not having fun, be upfront and honest with the person because you don't want to waste
I
your time
definitely agree with
there.
that. If you start off a local place, even you can see what their vibe is outside their comfort zone because they're not like local to the place you live at currently. So that's a good tip.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I like even like traveling with some of my friends like 2 hours away, they're just like, oh, we can't do that, we can't do this. And I'm like, it's traveling. Like you have to live as if you're a local. Don't live like a person who's never been here because people can tell when you're lost or you're like, you're
I
not
agree with
comfortable
that
or
because
confident.
like you do travel somewhere, like you see the vibes and you don't want to give out a vibe if you're gonna like especially in certain places that's not really safe for women or just people in general. Like I know when I was in Colombia, sorry, one second. I know when I was in Colombia, in Bogota, it was not recommended to go after dark in after the sun goes down dark because people actually rob other people at night. Even my hostel told me. My hostel told me like come
Mm.
here back before the sun goes down because if you go out venturing around at night, this neighborhood, even though it's very hostel friendly and there's a lot of different hostels and travelers here, people are known to get robbed. So it's best to like double check your place you're going to as
That's
well.
good to know.
Also, double check of the hostel. The hostel has so many recommendations because they're so used to travelers.
Also, I didn't get a chance to ask you this, but have you ever gone backpacking before?
Yeah, I have. I backpacked across Europe, Asia, Latin America, all the
Oh,
major
wow.
continents.
And what's been like your longest like backpacking trip?
I would say when I was studying abroad, so like every weekend I would backpack trip somewhere else. So I was gone for about 5 months to study abroad in Italy, and every weekend I would go somewhere else.
Wow. That is like the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like want to do it in the US, but the US is so expensive because I also kind of was thinking about it the other day. If I visit a different state each weekend, you knock out all 50 states because there are 52 weeks in a year. So you knock out all 50 states in like 1 year if you really want to be ambitious. But traveling the US is so
Yeah.
expensive.
And that's smart because since we live in New York City, if you think about it, you hit like 5 to 10 states like just right here. Cause there's so many like buses or different ways you can go about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So like the good thing about New York City is that you could easily take a bus somewhere else. Like you're like literally 2 hours away from going to like Philadelphia from New York. You can literally take half an hour and take like PATH to get to New Jersey and
Mhm.
Hoboken. So pretty close. Versus like in different places, depending where you go, like in California example, you could drive for 5 hours from LA to San Francisco, but you're still in
Oh yeah,
California.
yeah, exactly. That's like Florida. Like I think to drive the whole state of Florida, it's like 9 to 11 hours. It takes forever. And I don't even think that's accounting for if you come from Key West. That's just like Miami to like the top of Florida.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It depends on where you go, but I do have a goal to eventually visit all the states. It's just not now, just because traveling to the US is so expensive. It's funny because like it costs us $300 to fly from LA to New York. Costs us $300 to go to Costa Rica. Costs us $300 to go to London.
Yeah.
So it's like same price to go overseas than to travel in
And
the
it's
US.
cheaper to
It's
go
actually
overseas once you get there.
yeah, and once you go there, like Costa Rica, for example, it's cheap. I mean, it's not cheap compared to other countries
But it's just
nearby. So like Guatemala, it's a lot cheaper than Costa Rica. Costa Rica is still cheaper than like other places, but it's not the cheapest place. But some of the prices can be cheap.
hmm I did want to ask also, now that you say that, how many states have you been to in the US?
For the states, I actually kind of lost count because, like, for me, it kind of happens sporadically. It's funny because I keep in charge of more of the international states, like, sorry, international countries and states I've been to. Because some of those states I've been to, I went when I was very young, so I don't really remember all of it.
Mhm.
I just remember parts of it too. But I do have a goal of like visiting more states in the U.S.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. I don't want to keep it going, even though we're going to close it out. But thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate for you to like give me a chance to talk about my travels and upcoming things I'm up to. Thank you so much.
For anyone who wants to stay in contact with you, how can they reach out to you? What's your social
Okay,
media handles?
okay. So my Facebook is Pennywise Traveler. So it's PENNYWISETRVELER, and the same thing for my Instagram. And my website's pennywisetraveler.com. So it's all Pennywise Traveler except for my Twitter because my Twitter they do a specific amount of characters you can have. So it's PNYWISTRVELER for Twitter. But everything else is the same. So you can easily find me on Pennywise Traveler anywhere you go.
Alrighty, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, have a good one.
You too. Can't wait until the next episode to get your cup filled? Follow us on our social media platform for daily inspiration at Pour Into My Cup on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Or check out our blog and services at www.pourintomycup.org. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast to stay updated when new episodes are released. Leave a review and pour into someone else's cup by sharing the podcast. And I have to ask, is your cup half empty
are half full. Peace, love, happiness. Rashiba, signing off.